The Stars didn't show out for Minnesota. They didn't show up. Anthony Edwards, 16 points, only 2 field goal attempts in the first half. I'm not going to go all Stephen A. Smith here, but that was insane to have Anthony Edwards only put up 2 shot attempts in the first half. Julius Randle, game 3 rather, he was excellent. Game 1, he was pretty good, but he's had 2 clunkers out of 4 in this series so far. Only 5 points in the game. If you're the Stars, you got to show up. I mean, the bench stuff is great. Outshooting your opponent is great. But when your 2 stars, your 2 top guys, offensively anyway, only go for 21 points and shoot inefficient numbers, you're not going to win too many games.
Yeah. Well, do you think that the Ant Edwards stuff, look, in the first half, he should have been more aggressive. I don't think there's a lot of argument about that. I do think, however, first of all, again, I'm going to keep saying he's 23. And there was a lot of discussion last night online of sort of where he is compared to Shea. Well, he was where Shea was a few years ago, right? They're a few years apart. I think they're, 2 years in terms of draft year, 3 years in terms of age, or the other way around.
3 years
or
with
something.
age, 26 Shea, 23,
right?
Yeah.
Like, he'll get there. I'm not worried about Anthony Edwards. But do you think that is because of his mindset in that game last night, or do you think it was the fact that OKC basically was like, we are going to take you out of this game, and we are historically one of the best defenses that has ever played in the National Basketball League?
Night. They mixed up some of their defenses. Look, Oklahoma City, we said this going into the series, they're as equipped as any team in the NBA to cause Anthony Edwards a ton of problems. When you have Lou Dort that you can start on him, and you could pivot to Alex Caruso, and you can throw Case and Wallace, you're talking about 3 guys there, and Jalen Williams as well can run some minutes there. 3 guys that are either all defensive team level players or close to it. It's unique. The aggressiveness is what bothered me the most about Anthony Edwards. Like, as weird as it sounds, like I want to see him kind of go out in a shield in situations like that. I want to see him putting up 20, 25, 30 shots in a game. Like, even if they are taking stuff away from you and putting, showing you different looks, you're the star. You're the guy that's got to make plays. Especially when you have so many guys around you making plays. Now, granted, you want them to continue to do what they're doing, but I just didn't like the lack of aggression that I saw from Anthony Edwards in Game 3 before.
And look, Oklahoma City, again, I'm going to keep saying it, defensively, they're a different level, and we've seen it all season, and we certainly have seen it through these playoffs. That being said, there are guys who pierce their defense, right? Luka Doncic, for some reason, I wouldn't certainly have picked the Lakers in a Lakers-Thunder series if it had come up, but I would say Luka's going to go off in a bunch of those games because...
Did that in the 2 games they played at the end of the regular season.
Right?
Yeah.
So there are some players who have figured out, even with that kind of smothering defense, and Anthony Edwards has the kind of talent and the mindset, frankly. I think that he is an incredibly heady player for his age, where in a few years, I think that if you put him in that exact same game against that exact same defense, we would have a different outcome. But I do think this is the Western Conference Finals. He's not playing against, the Lollipop Gang. He's playing against a team that is now the favorite to win the title.
Lollipop Gang's pretty tough.
I mean, they can hoop. A little height issue, too small. There's a lot of too small going to the Lollipop Gang. But we shouldn't sit here and be like, man, I'm worried about this young man, because
I'm not worried about him. But do you? I would and I will criticize him if this series goes the way it's trending, because it would then be the second series in a row where he's had problems in a conference finals, right? Second year in a row.
The conference finals.
I get it, but we're face of the league, Rachel. We're talking face of the league stuff here now. Like, the standard, the bar is raised for Anthony Edwards. And look, he doesn't look like he's out of gas like he did last year, and maybe that's a byproduct of not playing quite as many games in the postseason. Didn't have a 7-game series with Denver he had to recover from before playing that series against Dallas. But back-to-back conference finals where, for whatever reason, he's kind of hit a wall, or at least in a couple of games so far.
So this is what, to me, again, media culture, whatever, things have been fast-forwarded so much. First of all, we're talking about even the face of the league conversation. When we have it, we're talking about the next face of the league. We're not talking about the current face of the league, because just in case you need a reminder from jersey sales, TV ratings, et cetera, the current faces of the league are still LeBron James and Steph Curry. I don't care who's in these playoffs. The face of the league, who the public identifies with the NBA, are still those guys.
Yep.
We're talking about Anthony Edwards as potentially the next face of the league. I definitely think he has a shot to be there. I'm not sure there's going to be one face of the league in our splintered media world, but if there is, he certainly is a candidate for it. But that is different from, hey, this guy is ready to eventually, soon-ish, carry the mantle of the stardom of the NBA, versus he's ready to win a title right now as the best player on the best team. Those are two different discussions. And I don't think he's there yet, but that's not a fault of his. I think he's 23 years old. His supporting cast isn't quite as deep or good as the Thunder's is. And I think that there are going to be games like this in his story where he learns, okay, I don't care who's on me. I've got to be more aggressive in the first half. And we saw him correct it in game, unlike I think he had a game earlier this playoffs. I'm not remembering exactly which one, where, I mean, he just was sort of not in it the whole time. And this time in the second half, we saw him come back and be a very different player.
Look, that Lakers game 5, like they didn't eliminate the Lakers because of Anthony Edwards. I mean, I think Randall had the better game of much better game of the two. He has had some outstanding games in these playoffs. He had one outstanding game already in this series, a couple of them even.
Yep.
But at what point do we stop going, he's only X or he's only Y, right? Is it next year?
It's not 23,
all right.
First of all.
Is it? But is it? Look, I don't. The point that you and I agree on, I think, is the supporting cast is not as good as the teams he's going up against. It's probably arguable last year that the Timberwolves supporting cast was weaker than Dallas. I mean, Dallas wasn't a one-man band because Kyrie is Kyrie, but it was two guys leading the way, leading the charge for what they did offensively. Anthony Edwards, Karl Towns.
Kyrie was very good in that
Very
series.
good, but I don't know that the point is I don't know that the Mavericks were measurably better roster-wise.
No, but Luka was measurably better than Ant at that age and in that span.
Yes, that part I agree with. This one maybe, look, I'd agree with you there too. And I said this before this series started, this was going to be the test of whether this Minnesota team was as good as last year's Minnesota team. Even though they had run their way through the first 2 rounds, I've been consistent. I did not believe that the Randall-led Minnesota team was better than the Towns-led Minnesota team. I thought that team was better because I think Towns is quite frankly better, and he's kind of showing some of that in a little bit of the Eastern Conference Finals. But at some point, you got to break through. At some point, if you're the next big thing, if you're a top 5 MVP guy, if that he purports to be or will be someday, you got to push through that sometimes. You got to win series
it's
you're not expected
now.
to
Was he
win.
top 5 in MVP voting?
No.
Okay, so expecting him to act and perform like he's a top 5 player in the league.
Where would you put him, though? 7, 8?
Yeah, but that's okay. He's in the Final Four. It just kind of boggles my mind, the discussion around these conference finals in general, around all of these teams. Yes, he is not the number 1 player in the world yet. He is probably not the top 5, one of the top 5 players in the world. And you know how we know? We all voted on it. We all had endless discussions. Even you out there who didn't vote, you talked about it, and I doubt most of you had Anthony Edwards as your MVP finalist, right? He's not there yet. He's going to likely get there. We should be excited to watch him ascend. He is ascending. This is what it looks like. And reaching 2 conference finals in the last couple years in an incredibly competitive Western Conference. I just don't know if we look at this kid at 23 years old and say, man, not living up to the hype. That's only true if the hype is just so unreasonable that nobody could live up to it.
I think the problem, though, is that how many bites of the apple is he going to get is the question. I mean, you look at this team and say, hey, if we run this back, there's a chance we'll be right back here next year. Right now, Nickeil Alexander-Walker makes $4 million. Not going to make $4 million next year. No. It's going to be a big market for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Did you hear he's Shai Alexander,
Gilgeous-Alexander's cousin? I don't know if that's come up
I
yet.
did. I heard it a few times.
Okay.
Cousin gets cousin. If I was Mike Breen, I'd say the same thing, though.
Yeah.
But Mike Conley is going to be a year older. Is Rob Dillingham? I'm just saying, the bites of the apple, they don't always come around.
No, of course not. But you're not always, this is going to be a recurring theme of these. I can not only tell, not just these few weeks, but as we go into the summer.
Yes.
Of you and I, the conversation we started 2 months ago about the Bucks and Giannis, and we'll talk about that too.
We're going to get there.
You cannot expect and hold as the standard they win the title every year. Otherwise, let's break up the team. Otherwise, he's a bust. Otherwise, Anthony Edwards isn't as good as we thought he was. That can't be the standard because it's too hard to win. Too many other things come up. Luck is a factor. Roster construction is a factor. Injuries, as we saw, are a factor. You couldn't have put yourself in a better position than the Boston Celtics put themselves in, and look what happened to them. So yeah, you're right. He might not get back here again. He might never sniff another conference finals. To throw in another sport and a player that most of our listeners and viewers have probably long forgotten about, Dan Marino made it to the Super Bowl in his rookie year and never made it back.
Marino said after that too, he's like, I can't wait to get back here again.
He did.
That never.
Yeah, I mean, I worked down in Florida. I covered him. He thought he was going to get back every year. I mean, there is a possibility this is the furthest Anthony Edwards ever gets, and that doesn't mean that he has now missed the moment and therefore he didn't show up in these conference finals.
So in your estimation then, Anthony Edwards deserves no criticism if this team goes out in 5 games.
Criticism? I don't think he deserves criticism. Do I think that we can point to things he could get better at? Absolutely. I can look at that game and say, man, why wasn't he more aggressive in the first half of the game? Why wasn't he doing this? Why didn't he do that? Can't he do this? But I wouldn't criticize him for it. I would say this is a kid who is still where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was a couple years ago. Were we criticizing him for not making it to the finals? No. Now he's the MVP. I mean, I just think that you have to look at all the factors that go into winning a title, and just getting to a conference finals 2 years in a row as not even arguably the guy who got them there, right? The Wolves are not in the conference finals 2 years in a row without Anthony Edwards. Period. The end. Yeah. I just don't think you criticize him after that. Well, you say, hey, I'd like his development to go here. This is where I would like him to develop more.
Can I just play devil's advocate here? I didn't criticize Shai last year because that was Oklahoma City's first run. They were not a playoff team the year before that. Yes, they advanced all the way to the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, had a fantastic year. But getting beat in the second round of the playoffs the way that they did, that to me was an organic step of their development. First time there. Minnesota's been there. They already went through that. This is their second go-around. If Shai was laying an egg in this series in the way that Anthony Edwards has...
You feel he's been laying an egg?
Well, a couple games been laying an egg, right? I mean, the number, like, he laid... Would you call game 4 an egg? Like...
Half an egg? A scrambled egg?
Okay, all right. Now we're just splitting the baby.
A little bit of an egg?
It's a little bit of an egg.
An
I'm
omelet?
just saying, like, the criticism, I think, is warranted. If he was going for 40 each game and the supporting cast around him wasn't...
I'm not saying, oh, man...
Hey, we beat the crap out of Rudy all the time. We got to, like...
Look, I'm not saying go soft on the kid. He obviously is tough. He can handle it.
Yes.
I just think I will just keep being the voice of this throughout these playoffs, throughout the summer as we rebuild teams. Have some fucking perspective, people. Like, conference finals 2 years in a row, as you point out, poised to be one of the best players in the NBA. He's 23 years old. He's still learning how to do this. And his learning curve is exactly where we would hope it would be, right? He's not behind. He's exactly where we would hope he would be at this point. I hope next year for him, because I'd like to see him become even more of a star. He is in that top 5 of MVP voting. And then, normally when you talk about progression, Oklahoma City's a young team. They needed to lose in the second round. Now they're ready. All of that talk that we do. It's true for players, too. And now maybe if he gets into the MVP conversation, then you can look at him as the team that would carry his team to an NBA Finals win. But people are asking him to skip steps in a league that all the old heads always say you can't skip steps.
I mean, are we asking Oklahoma City to skip steps too? Like, they're going to, unless something crazy happens in the next week, they're going to the finals with a team that started the year as the youngest team in the NBA. That was one of the youngest teams to ever win the number 1 overall seed. We're asking them to skip some steps.
Well, I don't know. You just said that they went through the progression that they went to. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, by the way, didn't start with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Right? So he has had the chance to develop and arrived at that team already with people saying, when that trade was made, the Clippers were unhappy about it, right? The Doc Rivers stood from the mountaintop. I don't want to give this kid up. I don't want to give this kid up. The front office wasn't thrilled either. Obviously, I'm not doing retroactive history. They made the deal that they made, but they knew exactly what they were giving up. This idea that the Clippers got caught flat-footed and didn't know that they were giving up an SGA level player. They knew what they were giving up. They just was different pressure on them at the time in an environment where the Lakers were getting LeBron James. This is what everyone else sort of forgets about that moment. The Lakers were getting LeBron that summer. Kawhi was telling the Clippers, if you don't get me Paul George, I'm gonna go join LeBron. And the idea, not just that they would lose out on Kawhi after 2 years of relentlessly pursuing him to the point where they believe they got fined for it, but to lose him to the Lakers across the street and to have a Lakers Kawhi potential at that point, 5-year reign over them was something that's why they made that trade. However, SGA, we knew what he was going to turn into, or at least knew that he had the potential to, and we got to give Anthony Edwards that same time.
I think we haven't given Anthony Edwards the same time as a younger player. He's a couple years behind. But it was really the last couple of years that SGA became SGA.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you that the Clippers knew they were giving up a talent. I don't believe anyone there was going to say,
that was probably, I'm
all-NBA.
oversaying that probably a little bit.
They thought he was a starter.
Pull
in
that
this
back
league.
a little bit.
Rewind the tape on that.
Yeah.
They thought he was a good player. There's no doubt about that.
But they knew how good he was. You're around them. They knew
that to get something.
That was killing them to give him up.
They had to give something. They knew that. And getting it was really, like you said, signing Kawhi and Paul George, getting both those guys.
And keeping them from across down the hall.
My worry about Minnesota is, I don't know where this team is going to go after this year. I mentioned, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is going to be, I don't even know if this is a hyperbolic statement. I think he's been the most sought-after guy in free agency, just because he's not going to be a max-level guy, or at least probably won't be.
What's the Mike Conley situation?
Mike Conley has 1 full year left in his contract after this season.
Do you maybe find a team that needs a nice veteran presence?
I think Mike Conley right now is the least of their problems, though, because you got Naz Reid with a player option on his contract. You've got Julius Randle with the player option on his contract. You've got an ownership group that is still yet to show that they're going to spend money to keep this team intact in Minnesota. Could they? I mean, look, Tim Connelly, I think, is one of, if not the smartest man in front offices across the league. And he has proven it in multiple stops, small market-ish stops, that he can, squeeze more out of a situation than most general managers could. But I don't know. The next year could be an interesting one in Minnesota. If they don't find a way to revamp this team or keep this group together, I wonder if we're going to be right back here, able to have this conversation about Anthony Edwards.
We might not. It's hard to get there. This is the final four.
Yeah, when you get there, you should play better. That's just all I'm saying on that one.